Hello and welcome to our final class. It's been an incredible journey. I really do hope that all of the work that you've done, I believe, has paid off and understanding what I think is a very vital set of skills and an approach to making the future possible. I think if you're starting to see the arc as you become more comfortable with mural and things, the hope is that we are able as humans to do a fairly good job of making uh, nonsense into sense. We're able to understand fairly vast amounts of information, but that does not necessarily make our lives better or sometimes even more powerful, although it has. Certainly, we love the information age. I certainly do. But being able to organize things in a way that makes them worth trusting is a very interesting subject that we talked about this last week. And thank you for sharing everything here. At the moment, the idea of trustworthiness and why something is trustworthy is interesting to me. I hope it's as interesting to you. And then I think on the other side, we talked a little bit about data visualization, which is sometimes just by putting it together into a format that's readable and quick to parse, that you trust it. And both of these have downsides, which we did discuss, which is also good, is that it is easy to fool people, and that by rating things, you're not always getting a clear picture, which leads me to a pitch, which is to please. I think my first year, the CTEC instructor and evaluations were put out, and I didn't say much, and I got a few evaluations, and the average was very favorable, and I was very happy about that, except that there were so many people in the class that did not rate me or give me any feedback that I just didn't trust it. So almost in a meta way of these ratings, it's like I really do need everyone, and that means everyone, to please take the time to offer your suggestions, your honest opinions, because they do make a big difference to me. I know we've done a lot of things in this class that I feel are maybe a little unorthodox, and I want to make sure they work, and I'm also interested in investing the time and making them work. So knowing that they're not working or something that I can fix is extremely important. I've also added a couple extra questions, but please take that time. I understand that it's kind of last on your list of things to do. But again, isn't it so meta that that ratings, we do trust them, but they are often not always the real opinion. So this week, if we look at last week, we talked about ratings and being able to see data in order to make some kind of a decision about it. That is, I'm going to call knowledge. So we're working up this pyramid. So knowledge is to me about trustworthiness, and trustworthiness is a pretty wide variable. Some people might trust things just because it looks right. So we all know what phishing is, meaning something looks legitimate, and so therefore you trust it. And sorry, it was somebody faking trustworthiness, which we didn't get into too much fraud, but certainly it is true that people trust some things that maybe they should not. Anyway, long story, right? But also we as good conscientious information architects are trying to mitigate and make things trustworthy, even though sometimes we don't really control what's happening. So when there is that element to your paper. I'll get to your paper in just a second, but just be aware that was, I think that's the next step. And then the top step is wisdom. And wisdom to me is, would a algorithm or some set of rules tell you what to do? Basically, that you would trust something that is not necessarily made for you. So we get into some of these newer areas that are very buzzwordy right now, such as neural nets, which are pretty nifty. But again, don't get too crazy about this stuff. This isn't part of your paper. But the reason why, if you ever wondered, why did I put this Portable Dragon book as an optional book, it's because of the I Ching. And the I Ching to me and this particular book is part of this video. So watch the video. It's a little bit long. I apologize. I should recut this video. But it's just the idea that someone has organized from a person's perspective of what should I do, how should I act, and they have taken all of human activity, and this is the Chinese, I think, took maybe thousands of years to do this, but they took all of activity and broke it into 64 different things that you could do. And within those 64 things, there's sort of nuances, 6 nuances each. And what the book does is take those things and things to do and matches it to passages in literature. So the person who wrote the book, I'm saying that's some amazing information architecture all the way down. And that comes to this point of wisdom, which is if you asked the oracle, as many do, what should I do? These systems say you should do X and people believe them, which is great. Actually, there's nothing particularly wrong with that. I think that level of a computer doing it is what we're going to talk about this week. And I'm actually calling it decision support, expert systems. Some people, I actually think recommendations are part of that. If you have all these patterns together, you might like this. I also am kind of lumping in this world of notifications. If you've kind of starting to see that that's a very hot topic, which is not to go to a site and look at something, but have the site ping you and say, you should look at this. And we are looking at those things. And now, is that wisdom? It's debatable, right? So so that's the topic of this week, just some discussions around that. We're also going to discuss a little bit more about tools and Mural. I'm interested in knowing how did this work out for you, if we want to discuss any of the tools. And speaking of tools, we've got Medium. So we are publishing on this platform. These choices are deliberate on my part, and I'm curious if you can figure out why. I think it's somewhat straightforward. Why? Well, maybe it isn't. So, why would you contribute? We're getting to that to some point. But when it comes to your paper, let me just offer this bit of advice, and we'll talk this week concerning the paper. When it comes to that work on the paper, you really don't have to venture too far into the sophistication of some of these products. They are very sophisticated. They're well funded. They do a lot of work just trying to keep people interested, which can be distracting from that idea of the core data. When I say core data, it's that table of information, just like you scraped or found or wherever you did. It's just a table of information. And that table is something that I want you to try to figure out what that is. What is that core data? And I think I might have given you some hints, but it's probably just some sort of content, and maybe it's a date, and maybe it's an author. And so if you look at that and you describe that in the beginning of your paper, I'm going to be happy, because just looking at it is something that's really not super mysterious. Even, we talked a little bit about Facebook. Facebook is really just a threaded discussion, and a threaded discussion has these records that consist of something. But in that threaded discussion, those fields then have to be organized. So just like you did, use the same skills. Somehow you had to make something a header, something a paragraph. They organized it in a way. Some of them did a really interesting job. So say, you can now recognize, because there's repetition, certainly in all of these, there's going to be lists upon lists. How did they organize that list? Maybe it's visual, maybe it's in some ways interesting. I mean, just looking at it from the point of view of, I did this, how did they do it, is the whole point of the paper. They had to create taxonomies. You had to create taxonomies. They probably, or maybe, didn't do a better job than you. Maybe they figured out a way to organize things or help people organize things that was really unique. And now you can appreciate it because you tried it yourself. So if you go back, the first thing you did was create a form. They're going to have a form that you have to fill out. And by looking at that form, what is it in this form that helps me organize this? And I post, by the way, this to YouTube every week. And believe me, their form is still pretty terrible. Sidebar. Sorry who anyone's doing YouTube, but they don't really ask for a lot of information to be able to create taxonomies. And I still think, boy, some of these companies are still struggling with this, right? So give them a break. But there's certainly going to be ways of organization. There's going to be flows that might be interesting as well. So just take most of the paper, 70 to 80%, is just looking at it in the same process that we went through in class, and that's important to me. The point is, it's a understood process that's helpful and works. And then the last part of it is what we're talking about these last 2 weeks, which is something crazy cool like notifications and or metadata, people contributing in some ways, the like button on Facebook, that's metadata. And definitely you want to talk about that, and you also want to kind of critique it, saying, hey, is there any place they can go? What is it going to look like in 5 years? That might be a bit of a stretch because we didn't really talk about the future too much. But that's what we're talking about this week. And to support any kind of future state, don't go too crazy. So the point is, most of the paper is just how did they follow? Can you discern how they followed the same kind of formatting or the same kind of process you went through using the work we did in class to inform your opinion? And that's what this says here. So if you want to read it again, and if you have any questions, we'll be talking this week. So best of luck. It's been a really terrific class. Thank you all for teaching me so much. That's what I love about this. You all have some amazing background and opinions, and I love the conversations we've had. So best of luck to all of you, and talk to you soon.